1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, let's continue our conversation with Dr. Peter Alperin, Vice President of Doximity, joining us on the phone from San Francisco. And Dr. Alperin, thanks for sticking with us. I do want to ask you, sort of going back to where we started a little bit, because we're seeing headlines. We've got a market, candidly, that's largely discounting, to say the least, what's going on from a health perspective. But sort of as human beings, as people who want to get back to something resembling normal life, what should we be thinking about when it comes to the next phase of this virus?
Wow. So I completely understand people's desire to get back to some sense of normalcy. I myself would love to be able to go out to dinner and do all the things that I'd like to do and watch baseball and all the different kinds of things. I do think, however, the new normal is going to be for a significant amount of time. I think we are going to have to be wearing masks, for instance, for a while. And I think we're going to need to be practicing social distancing for a while. Frankly, until there is a vaccine, until there is something that provides a definitive prevention for COVID-19, we are always going to be at risk of localized epidemics. I think widespread testing is obviously a huge part of the solution, so that we can be more focal and more localized about those people that we need to quarantine. But we're going to have to continue some level of this for the foreseeable future. It doesn't mean we'll have to be in the massive quarantines that we were back in April, but some form of distancing, prevention, and quarantining will be, what the matter of the day will be for the next several months.
Have we really missed the mark, though, in terms of really getting our act together about testing and tracing on a national scale? We talked with Dr. William Haseltine yesterday, obviously well known in the medical and biotech community, but I do wonder if, he said you need kind of like a military in place on a healthcare level to do this right and do it on a grand scale. And he really just said we're missing the mark, and that's how we could have kind of changed the outcome here. Do you agree?
I do agree in principle that if we had more widespread testing earlier and it had been available pretty much on demand throughout the country, months earlier, then we'd be in a better position, because we'd have a better system in place for identifying, again, those people who are actively carrying COVID or are afflicted with it. It's one of the troubles that we have with our system being decentralized in the way that it is, with states, having a huge role, and it's sort of inherent in the way that we deliver healthcare in this country. However, that said, I do think that there's been huge strides made in testing. For instance, here in San Francisco, it is pretty easy now to get a test pretty much whenever you need it and get the results back in 2 to 3 days. I can't say that that's true for all localities, but it's true for here. So while I agree in principle, it certainly doesn't mean that we haven't made great strides.
And I guess the last thing that I would ask you, Dr. Alperin, is, back to the discussion of telehealth a little bit. Does it already feel sort of normal to go to the doctor more or less for something non-COVID? Like, how does it feel for patients and for doctors?
I think that we're moving back towards a more semblance of normal. I'll say that, in my own practice, we are seeing, we're doing a lot of telehealth, and we're using dialer video to do that. But when patients do need to come into the office, we have made some changes, which are subtle but important. Patients come in with a mask. We try to do as much check-in as we can prior to the appointment. We're spacing out appointments. So we are taking some of those really sort of just prudent steps. But like I mentioned, it's there's a new normal, and that's how things work. Is whenever there's a big event, things get recalibrated, and we adapt. Again, we adapt.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, good to spend some time with you. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter Alperin, Vice President of Doximity, joining us on the phone from San Francisco. Good to get his perspective, both as someone in a company, but also, practicing medicine, which obviously seeing this on the front lines, Carol.
Yeah. And, just, again, a bit of a cautious voice reminding that we're still in the thick of it, no doubt about it. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. Let's get back on over to Nancy Lyons in our 99.1 Newsroom. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol, the coronavirus spread across the Sun Belt has public health experts asking whether those states are equipped to deal with the pandemic after the lessons of the spring. Texas alone has seen an 11% surge in hospitalizations in the past 24 hours. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro reports.
States were expected to establish testing regimens and contact tracing teams so that when they reopen their economies, their hospitals wouldn't be overwhelmed. After Arizona, Florida, and Texas reported their largest one-day increases in new cases, it was clear the virus was not contained. And Dr. Andy Pekosh at the Bloomberg School of Public Health worries it could run out of control.
We would be hoping that at this point in time we'd have enough resources in place to identify those cases that are coming up, isolate them, and take other appropriate measures to minimize virus spread.
Some governors argue the higher case totals are the result of more testing, but epidemiologists say the evidence points to increased community spread. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he'll try to begin considering next week a broad Republican proposal to overhaul policing practices in light of the George Floyd protests. Sponsor Senator Tim Scott, the lone black Republican senator, says he's been profiled by police and recently.
I was stopped this year driving while black when I got a warning ticket for failing to use my turn signal earlier in my lane change. And so this issue continues, and that's why it's so important for us to say that we hear you.
The Republican proposal would establish a database of use of force violations and establish new training procedures. House Democrats say it doesn't go far enough. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute. Still got it.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. We're temporarily changing when 60-plus London Oyster photo cards, older persons freedom passes and English National Concession Scheme passes can be used. From the 15th of June, you will only be able to use these passes from 9 a.m. on weekday mornings. This is to protect those who must travel in the morning peak and allows you to travel at times when you can safely social distance from others. For more information, search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Enjoy peace of mind with Ford. Relax and think about 3 months deferred payment on a new vehicle. Visualize an additional 3 months cashback. Breathe deeply and let 0% APR representative on selected vehicles wash over you. That's peace of mind from Ford. Current promotion ends 30th of June. Search Ford Peace of Mind for details.
Only available with Ford credit on selected finance plans. Exclusions and deposit restrictions may apply.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games. And big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was. But he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up with the Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards, that's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are higher. Crude oil lower for the first time in 3 sessions. The technology sector leading the market higher for a 4th day. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all advancing after worrying increases in coronavirus cases whipsawed investors. Again, higher right now with the S&P up 10, a gain of 0.3%. The Dow up 30 points. That is a gain of 0.1%. And NASDAQ up 82 points, higher by 0.8%. 10 years up 4.30 seconds with a yield of 0.73%. Gold up 31 cents the ounce, a little changed at $17.26. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.2%, $37.92 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Master here with you on a Wednesday afternoon. And what a Wednesday it is in many ways. Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber, excuse me.
And can I just say, having started to go out in the world and sometimes have to go to a store, the one thing you're realizing that's really now everywhere is plexiglass.
It is. So let's talk about plexiglass with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber and Bloomberg Business Week assistant managing editor Jim Ellis. This is leading the business section this week. So Joel, tell us about this. This, I dare say, is a story that was hiding in plain sight.
Oh, that's a good one. So many.
See what I did there?
I did. I heard it actually.
You got hurt by it?
I know Jim's going to have more jokes for us here too. But yeah, the moment that he mentioned the story, it just sort of was like, oh, that is literally hidden in plain sight. And Carol, to your point, as everything has been reopening, from restaurants to offices, it's created this huge boom for the makers of plexiglass, and so much of a boom that there's actually an incredible shortage. So, Jim, who's behind plexiglass? This is just a company that, it's, again, hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, I mean, people had sort of taken for granted that, this was a kind of product whose time it had passed. I mean, plexiglass has been around for almost 100 years, and it was a German scientist who discovered it back in before the 20s, and it turned out that a German company called Rome, which was the sort of old Roman Haas, has continued to make it, and it's normally used for things like the lights in an automobile, the light covers. And you don't really think of it as something that is everywhere. However, it had gotten to the point where it was having pricing problems, there was oversupply, and it was a business that Rome had started to cut workers for and trying to look for ways to save money. Then, bam, all of a sudden, COVID-19 comes, and people need the guards that basically separate, cashiers or bus drivers or whatever from customers on the other side. And there then becomes a giant rush to buy this stuff. And, the demand that, and some people are saying, some analysts are saying that for partitions inside businesses, it's tripled demand in just a matter of weeks.
Which has been like kind of a game changer, Jim, right, for this company. I mean, they were hitting some tough times here, right? Especially as I think auto demand and some other industrial demands were down.
Yeah, I mean, it's, because automobiles are a big piece of that business, they had, had a sort of a slump in that. And because the patents on these types of, this type of acrylic, or the patents are gone, and so it's entry is not blocked for newcomers to come in. So there are other companies that make sort of similar products, and too many people were making the stuff, and so therefore it couldn't get good pricing. Now the demand is there, and Rome is sold out at least through October, maybe later.
And Jim, what you mentioned patents. What does the competitive landscape for plexiglass look like?
I mean, it's funny because I sort of thought, this is a business that maybe a lot of people were not active in, but some of the original companies are still, basically still command that business. Rome, but also Imperial Chemical, which is a European company that makes something called Perspex, which is a big product in Europe, which is sort of, and then the old Lucite, you'll sort of remember when, at least from when I was younger, it was quite a big brand here in the U.S. that DuPont used to make, but now that brand is owned by Mitsubishi Chemical. And so all three of them have now discovered that there's this huge demand for these extruded or cast sheets, and it's all because of protective shield. And that's not expected to go away anytime soon. I mean, a lot of people are saying, give it a few months and we're back to normal. Even if business gets back to normal, consumers have this feeling that they want to have some protection between themselves and others, people who serve them, and vice versa. Companies want to protect their employees. So there is truly going to be demand for this, to remain.
Well, and what's interesting too, Jim, is that here's a company, right, because of what's happened with the virus, and this is a reminder that when it comes to the virus, there's often several different sides to this story. We know a lot of companies shut down, a lot of jobs have been lost. We keep talking about the economic impact. These folks, though, have actually had to bring on more workers, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's, and in that sense, it's a somewhat happy story because, they've had to, add more workers, and a lot of them are temporary staff because they just couldn't handle the orders. They couldn't handle the logistics of actually getting product to people. Plus, they've been able to redeploy workers from their other type parts of the business that are not doing as well, like automotive, and they've been taking some of those workers, putting them onto the sheeting business, to make, the sheets that go into all these, sort of partitions that you see in businesses. So in that sense, this is the company that hasn't had to say everybody go home. Instead, they're saying, you've got a real need here to help the rest of business operate, and they're here.
And that's nothing to sneeze at. Oh,
really?
That was Jim's headline, and
kill his mic. I'm just going to say it.
We all gave Jim a round of applause when he gave us that headline. So.
There you go. Well, it's a great leader of the business section. I mean, Jim, I guess last question for you is, how does this sort of jive with what you're seeing? You're looking across the entire business landscape. I mean, are these the sorts of stories that we're going to keep seeing? These maybe unexpected places where we see some growth?
Well, unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these are going to be the minority of companies simply because demand in pockets like this are going to be very strong. But overall, anything that's consumer related, simply because of the lockdown of so many consumers in so many countries, that's going to be tough to actually maintain demand. We've already seen that in travel. We've already seen that in things like autos. So let's just say it could be the lost year.
Yeah, and I think our team even at our office talks about that some of the plexiglass is being put up around various desks so that I can have some space finally from Jason Kelly and my producer, Paul Brennan. Just going to say it.
Lord. I mean, I think you made that clear back when we were in the office with the tower of books that you have, and among other stuff.
I'm resourceful. I figure out how to create little borders.
How to create like a little den for yourself. And I can see you. It's not just us. I can see your background at home. Jim Ellis, thank you so much. Assistant Managing Editor, looking at the business section for Bloomberg Business Week. We have a story in the business section this week. Our BW Talks with Chris Nassetta. So check that out.
I was reading through the edit. Really great in terms of some of the content he gave us about travel and what's going on. Now, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week with Jason and myself, we're going to continue. If you are listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. Coming up next, we're going to talk with Kathleen Hayes. She had a conversation with one of the Fed officials.
That's right. Plus, JP and the Feds on Capitol Hill. This is Bloomberg.
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, you must now wear a face covering at all times, avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
30 for 30 is up to bat again with Long Gone Summer, the new documentary chronicling Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa's legendary race to topple the single-season home run record in 1998. Go behind the scenes with TuneIn's Long Gone Summer channel, featuring podcasts like Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show, where they discuss the film with director A.J. Schnock. Plus, keep the nostalgia going with classic game replays from Cubs and Cardinals history. Search Long Gone Summer to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six Podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brince's methodology for predictions when he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Wednesday. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. Technology shares propelling equity markets higher for a fourth day after worrying increases in coronavirus cases whipsawed investors. NASDAQ now at the highest in a week, led by increases in both Apple and Microsoft. Apple shares did advance today to a record. Well, as for the economic recovery and coronavirus, Julia Coronado is president of Macro Policy Advisors, and she is dismissing comparisons to a natural disaster.
I'm sheltering in Texas right now, and we're seeing escalating cases of COVID, and we're opening up, and yet we're going to live with this disease. So as businesses, as consumers, we have to make our decisions knowing that there is this deadly disease swirling around out there. So that makes it very difficult to go back to normal, and that makes it quite different from a hurricane.
The S&P 500 index is up, barely, fluctuating now, up by a point. The Dow has turned negative. It is down now by 51 points, down about 0.2%. And NASDAQ is up 51. For NASDAQ, that is a gain there of 0.5%. So again, stocks are now trading mixed. The S&P up by half a point. 10-year up 6/30 seconds with a yield of 0.73%. We've got gold up 33 cents the ounce at $17.26. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 1.1%, 37.94 a barrel. Sources tell Bloomberg Italy is close to approving a $7.1 billion credit facility for Fiat Chrysler automobiles, setting the stage for Europe's biggest government-backed financing to a car maker since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Shares of Fiat Chrysler today, they are trading lower. Automakers all down. Fiat Chrysler down 0.7%. GM down 1.3%. Ford shares lower now by 2.6%. After earnings last night, Oracle shares, they're trading lower by 4.7%. Again, recapping now, the Dow down 50 points, S&P up 1, a gain of less than 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics now. A lot going on in the world of economics. Some big voices speaking to Bloomberg. Kathleen Hayes joins us, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg, on the phone in New York City. She had a virtual sit-down with Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan last night on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. So talk to us about, actually, let's play some sound from that, and then we'll talk to you on the other side, Kathleen.
There's downside risks to the recovery, and there's upside, and a lot of which it's going to be, in my view, at this stage, is going to have less to do with monetary and fiscal policy and a lot more to do with how effectively we execute the healthcare policies.
So that's a very pointed and important point, I feel like, Kathleen. Tell us more about what Mr. Kaplan had to say.
Well, this is something that Rob Kaplan's been delving into very deeply, daily, very carefully. As he says, he has conversations with scientists and virologists, all kinds, all the time. And he sits on the board, in fact, of one of Harvard University's a medical group. Anyway, he's really got his hands on this. And what I think he's in a way reasonably optimistic about the economy, but when he says there's upside risk and downside risk from healthcare, well, I guess let's start with the downside risk. As many Fed officials have said, including Jay Powell, as long as people don't feel confident about going out and really going to a store, I feel pretty okay. I'm okay social distancing and wearing a mask and all that. I know people who aren't. And even more so, like going to a game, going to a restaurant, or going to work because they're not afraid, they're afraid they won't be safe enough that's going to hold the economy back. But in some kind of ideal world, in fact, he said it again this week, that with all that money we're spending, billions if not trillions, why not take millions or even billions and invest it in the technologies, for example, something where you could just be on your way to a football game and get tested and we'd know if you had COVID-19 or not, right? So I think those are sort of the two extremes. And I think that's why it says how we handle this is so important, because we've seen some of the recovery. He called the bottom in May.
Right.
And even before we got these data. But I think that's what's so important to him.
Kathleen, I love that that's the snippet that you chose to play here for us, because I think if there's any consistent message from leaders in this world is that until you get the virus under control, you're just not going to have that safety security measure out there in the economy. And whatever you need to do to make people feel confident, I mean, it's that simple. It's not simple getting there, but it's that simple that has to be the focal point. And, we've talked with some pretty smart officials too. And, this whole idea that you kind of almost need a military effort, talk about a war. We did talk about this being a war, the virus, but you really need a coordinated, kind of almost military-like reaction to it to get this under control and to make sure that, you're putting all the systems in place, the technology, whatever it is, the medicine, to get control of it.
Well, and I think that's also another point they make along those lines is that it isn't just the generals and the colonels and corporals who count. It's every soldier on the ground, right? Every person, by social distancing, wearing their mask and washing their hands all the time, can make a huge difference. And I think one of the trickiest things for many people is the workplace. And you could go to Bloomberg, you can go to JP Morgan, you can go to a manufacturing plant, and even just the most basic level there of figuring out what are the simple, safe things you can do so people can go back to work. And even if it's not quite full force, right, at least getting partly there, seems to me that that's part of the message too. Treatments, that's important. Vaccine maybe takes a while, and then there's just I think one thing everybody should realize is these kinds of viruses tend to have basically sort of a 2-year cycle, and we hope we can get it under control before 2 years because they tend to die down. SARS did, MERS did, but there is, regardless of what happens, this is not going to be with us forever. It's just that right now what we can do to help the people who are out of work and to help small businesses rebuild, or or move on to something else if their business has been so beaten up that they can't even do that again. That's what's important in June, right now.
Most important thing that you've heard from Chair Powell?
Well, when he said that, and I think it's tough, right? He's the chairman of the Fed. He does not want to get politicized, whatever he thinks himself personally about what the Republicans and Democrats in Congress should do. He said right now he does think more support for people recently unemployed and again for small businesses is probably a good idea because the economy is starting to recover and now, but it's not recovered enough for everybody to get jobs right away. And in order to feed the recovery and also just to take care of people who, it's like a natural disaster. It isn't because you messed up and you lost your job, right? It's a natural disaster, like a tsunami or something that just knocks everything down. We have to support those people in the meantime. I think him taking that very strong but very subtle step, making that statement, is probably important to the people in Congress right now who are arguing some kind of further steps. Maybe we have to modify the checks that go out, right? Maybe we have to modify who gets it and who doesn't. That's important, and Rob Kaplan has made that point recently as well. But I think that was probably the strongest thing that Jay Powell said today.
Yeah. I am also a little concerned that people are getting, worried that people are going to get a little bit more money in these checks, and that's why they're staying home, because I think that's not necessarily the right focal point. It's about, let's just make sure everybody's being taken care of so that people do the right thing on a healthcare level, and that ultimately will help us get closer to reopening the economy sooner rather than later. Kathleen, thank you so much. Congratulations. Good conversation with Robert Kaplan of the Dallas Fed. So I'm so glad we could share that with you.
Yeah, and I think that point, just going right back to that little bit of sound that we played, that this is ultimately about managing the health crisis. I feel like we're losing a little bit of that focus.
Because we heard that a lot, I feel like, in our conversations early on. And I do think, I feel like there's a little bit more pressure to kind of reopen, get it going. And then every once in a while, someone's like, folks, let's not forget, we're still in a healthcare crisis.
Yeah, big time. Big time. And I think it's especially hard to ignore that when you are looking at the headlines day to day, the state-by-state headlines, especially when you think about Florida, Texas, now California. You think about New York City going to phase 2 reopening and sort of bracing ourselves. You think about what the impact is going to be from all those people out protesting. There's a lot to get our heads around. All right. Let's get down to Washington, world and national headlines with Nancy Lyons. Hey, Nancy.
Hey there, Jason. Senate Republicans are promising quick action on their newly drafted police reform bill. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports leaders plan to bring it to the floor as early as next week.
The bill, presented by the only African-American Republican Senator Tim Scott, would require reporting of violent incidents, create a commission to recommend more explicit measures, and improve police training.
We can train our officers better to de-escalate situations, not standing there watching an officer with his knee on the neck, but intervening in those situations.
House Democrats are introducing their own bill that would, among other things, make it easier to prosecute or sue police officers who overuse force. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
It was 5 years ago today. A 21-year-old self-declared white supremacist, Dylan Roof, entered Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and opened fire on the black congregants who were assembled for Bible study. 9 people were killed. Tonight, a video tribute to the victims will be posted on the church's Facebook page and YouTube channel, followed by a March for Justice on Sunday. South Carolina remains one of only 4 states without a hate crime bill on the books. Well, it's a 130-year brand.
Aunt Jemima pancakes.
Quaker Oats says it's changing the name and image of the syrup, saying the origins of Aunt Jemima are based on a racial stereotype. Quaker, a subsidiary of PepsiCo, says removing the image and name is part of an effort by the company to make progress toward racial equality. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Whether planes are landing or not.
Look, some of these are not going to keep open.
The coronavirus crisis will reduce passenger numbers by half.
Whether or not imports are arriving.
Are you revising your estimates upwards now?
We're still focused on Europe.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is urging consumers to go out and shop.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Haven't you guys missed the boat?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
It's a stock market driver.
Now they're starting to see a little bit of panic from policymakers.
It's a global political force.
How will this epidemic reshape big tech and its relationship with Washington?
It's a virus.
This coronavirus is a global pandemic.
Is there a safe haven?
And the facts matter.
The situation is so bad because of the virus that is simply unavoidable.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Economics.
All this doom and gloom was out there.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing. so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for streaming all your favourite box sets back to back while sitting in your garden, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Sue, or Sanjay, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Ali on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Airbags to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Thanks to National Lottery players, South Denbighshire Community Partnership are now delivering Hot Wheels to elderly people in the community like Bob and Sarah.
Thank you.
And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
At Asda, we're helping you shop safely by keeping our stores clean and limiting customer numbers so you can keep 2 meters apart. With our Scan and Go mobile app, you can reduce contact at the till too. Asda, we're all in this together. Subject to availability. Mobile data charges may apply.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow's given up earlier gains on the minus side. S&P just fading into the red. Right now, we've got NASDAQ holding on to gains, but let's get all the details as we head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks trading mixed right now with the Dow down 78 points. S&P's dropped 2. NASDAQ is higher by 43. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.73%. Gold is trading little changed, and transports gain 31 points. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Intel, Home Depot, and Visa, while ExxonMobil and Chevron led to the downside. After earnings, Oracle fell 5%. And in other news, Hertz suspended plans to sell $500 million in stock on the SEC review, and Cinemark plans to reopen all U.S. theaters by July 17th. On the geopolitical front, Lighthizer said the U.S. has made very little headway with the European Union on a deal, and the Washington Post reported that John Bolton said that Trump asked China's Xi for re-election help. Wrapping things up, ABM Industries reports after the bell. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Hey, we thank you very much, Bill, and to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg Time Squawk SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser right here with you on a Wednesday afternoon. It's time for Bloomberg Green. That's brought to you by PGIM, the investment management business of Prudential. Find out how PGIM stands by the clients and communities they serve around the world. Visit pgim.com.
So in our weekly Bloomberg Green segment, Jason Kelly, we're going to take a look at the green-eyed investors who are starting to reposition for the post-pandemic future. It begs the question, who will profit the most from a green recovery? So let's get into it with Emily Chasen. She's sustainability editor at Bloomberg News. She joins us on the phone in New York City. I stole your words because they were good ones. And she joins us. Oh, actually, are you not in New York?
No, I'm in Philadelphia today.
You're in Philadelphia. Okay. I know everybody's been moving around a little bit in part of our news organization. So tell us about this, because I think this is, Jason and I are talking a lot about how, ultimately so many things and the way you get things to change is often kind of follow the money or with some kind of financial incentive. And I do wonder, this has certainly played out in the green world as well.
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting few weeks in the green world where there's been a lot more talk about racial justice and environmental justice. And there's a lot of connections, I guess, between like where a power plant is and how that air pollution affects communities of color that are close to that. And lots of questions about, if we do this green recovery, if we're able to get to that point where we're building sort of a new economy and building back better, who is going to be able to participate in that and how is it going to be equal? Because there's so many investors that are going really fast into the space, but there's people who are, maybe going to be left out again. And do we want to have the same model that repeats that history if we're building a new kind of economic structure in the future?
So we do want people to read your story, of course, but, give us a taste of it. Who is going to win? Who's going to make some money here?
Yeah, well, investors already have made a ton of money in the green stocks that were, thriving at the end of the year. They felt like this last little bit was a buying opportunity. So people have gone back into companies like Tesla and Enphase. And, green funds have been performing really well coming out of this. And there's a ton of investors that are saying, okay, well, I'm still going to go ahead and launch my green infrastructure fund and I'm going to invest in that. The thesis still holds and they're just going like gangbusters. So the question is, when you build these new companies, what do they look like for the communities that are there and elsewhere? And so an option that people are starting to talk about more is bringing back some of these profit-sharing models that existed in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was president.
Well, talk to us about them, exactly how they work and how that would be, a way of spreading around the wealth.
Yeah, so profit sharing is, not that common today anymore. You still find companies like General Motors or Ford where they have some sort of profit sharing arrangement with companies. But there are a few, like 6,000 companies that have some sort of employee stock ownership plan in them. And Leo Strine just did a piece for Bloomberg Opinion. He's the former Delaware Chancery Court judge, but he just did a piece for Bloomberg Opinion this week saying, profit sharing might be a great way to improve equality and just sort of share the wealth a little bit better in the future. And there was actually just a study earlier this year on what green companies that do this profit sharing look like. And it found out that they were 21% scoring better on their sustainability assessments than companies that weren't employee owned that were also green.
That's so interesting. So I guess, one of the things I did want to ask you, Emily, knowing that you were joining us, we've heard a lot of people talk about sort of ESG in kind of a different lens over the past few weeks, and that, the E has been getting a lot of attention. There have been some people focused on the G, sort of on the wonkier side of, boards and how companies are run and executive compensation, things like that. But the S has certainly come sort of front and center. How does that all balance out? And you alluded to the idea that, over the past few weeks, some of the climate and some of the more racial justice type issues have been linked together rightly. But say a little bit more about how it all fits together.
Yeah, well, it's really about who gets to own the clean energy future. If you think about your solar panels on your roof, that's literally like power to the people, right? It's coming to your house and you can, you own the power and you can sell it back to an electric company often and make some money from it. Or decentralization is a big part of the economic future, and there's a huge opportunity for more equal payment and economic incentive systems in that. So I think it is something that people are starting to think about as they go forward and say, well, who's going to own this future, and how can we create a different economic structure under it if we're going to invest all this taxpayer money in it, if we're going to invest all this capital in it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point, and I'm glad you pointed out how linked all these things are, because it's important to think about. And as Carol said at the top, we know you got to follow the money to understand this, and you and your team do such a nice job of that. Emily Chasen, sustainability editor for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Pennsylvania. Her story: who will profit the most from a green recovery? When I read the story, it was not exactly what I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it was good.
Exactly. I'm with you as well. Right. But it's an interesting way of looking at it, especially against the context of kind of everything else that's going on in our world right now.
Yeah. Well, right? and I feel like even before, we really saw the last few weeks and all the protests around racial justice, we were talking a little bit more about the state of the worker. I remember the conversation we had with the former Volvo CEO, Per Gyllenhammer. Boom. Pulled it out.
Nice.
Nailed it. And he talked a lot about, taking care of the blue-collar worker. And I think that's a really interesting thing to keep
a priority.
Yes, exactly. All right, coming up, Dave Wilson, his chart of the day. You're listening to Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street's gains are fading amid concerns about increases in coronavirus cases. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 68, the S&P 500 down 1, the Nasdaq is up 50. Twitter is allowing some users to record and post their tweets as short audio clips, up to 140 seconds in length. The idea is to give people more space than Twitter's 280-character maximum. The voice tweets will roll out to iOS users in the coming weeks. Zoom is bending to pressure and will offer full end-to-end encryption to all users, free and paid. Although end-to-end encryption ensures privacy, it also means that participants can't call into a Zoom meeting by phone. Uber is getting into the software business. It's making the technology that powers its ride-hailing business available to others, starting with public transit agencies. Its first customers are transportation providers in California's Marin County. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
At Bloomberg, we know a lot of financial experts.
He's a former president of the European Central Bank.
Your Global Financial Warriors is a classic textbook.
A lot of political experts.
If you were advising the President of the United States, what's the thing that he's not doing that he should do?
And lucky for you, we know a lot of science experts, too.
You talked about those reagents which are necessary for the testing.
It's also the behavioral psychological approach.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, you must now wear a face covering at all times, avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and we'll be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races. Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games. And big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was. But he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
I hope it's a good song. That's all I'm going to say.
It's going to be a great song.
Well, they're always great, right? Or they're always good. Sometimes
they're doubting Dave Wilson?
I would never doubt Dave Wilson.
I just want to know if it's going to take you back to Nassau Coliseum. That's the real question.
I have to message my brother and find out when that was and if it was. I forgot to do that. All right. We're going to get the chart of the day. It's a good one. It's a great one, in fact.
I love it.
But let's get back to your top business stories and to Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
A happy Wednesday to you both. Want to begin with an update to the Hertz headlines we brought you a few minutes ago. Hertz Global Holdings suspending plans to raise cash by selling new shares that the bankrupt car renter had described as potentially worthless after its proposal failed to pass muster with regulators. The company, according to a filing, has, quote, halted sales pending further understanding of the nature and timing of the regulatory review. Hertz shares, they're up now by about 9.7%. Twitter says it will let users record and post their tweets as short audio clips directly in the app, which other users can then listen to from their Twitter feed. Twitter shares, they're declining now by about 1.2%. The Aunt Jemima brand will be phased out. Uncle Ben's could follow suit as nationwide protests prompt a sudden corporate reckoning on racial inequality. Owner PepsiCo plans to change the name of its Aunt Jemima pancake mix and syrup, acknowledging that the 131-year-old brand is rooted in racially problematic tropes. As for PepsiCo shares, they are trading higher now. They're a little changed, up less than 0.1%. It is a mixed market here. 27 minutes to go. We've got the Dow, the S&P both lower. NASDAQ is higher, holding on to an 8-point gain now, up by about 0.1%. But the Dow down 157 points, down 0.6%. S&P down 9, down 0.3. We've got the 10-year up 6/32 with a yield of 0.73%. Gold up $1.20 the ounce at $17.27, up by about 0.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%, $37.78 a barrel. 3:33 on Wall Street. Time now for the Small Business Report, and here's John Tucker.
The second stage of New Jersey's reopening is underway. Across the state, outdoor dining is allowed with restrictions, and retail businesses are open for limited indoor shopping. But are the customers coming back? Well, it kind of depends. Angela Capadonna is co-owner of Hudson Cafe at the Jersey Shore. Angela, what kind of effect has the pandemic, first of all, had on your business?
So usually during the winter, we're pretty packed inside, especially on the weekends. Not really that big of a to-go business. Since the pandemic hit, we did not close, and we said we were going to go to strictly, curbside pickup only. And that's worked out for us. We're at about 60% of what our previous business was, but it's still keeping us, going.
Now, outdoor dining is allowed to resume with restrictions in New Jersey. How is that going?
We are just doing our curbside pickup only because we only have about 4 outside tables.
Have you gotten any guidance as to when the indoor can open?
I just heard on the radio this morning that Governor Murphy said that, we might, instead of be months out from indoor dining, it might be weeks. So that's very exciting for us because, we miss our customers. We miss seeing all the faces and stuff like that.
Angela, thanks a lot. Angela Capadonna at the Hudson Cafe in New Jersey. Best of luck. And that is your Bloomberg Small Business Report.
And John Tucker, we thank you. Fed Chair Jay Powell urging Congress not to remove fiscal support too fast. Again, recapping. Equities trading mixed. S&P lower, down 5, down 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Okay. I have seen her in concert
at
Radio City, and it was incredible. She is the queen of soul. No doubt about it.
Yes.
Did you guys see Kelly Clarkson recently did something too online? I can't remember what Aretha song it was.
Interesting. Well, I would say who's zooming who may not be
my fave.
Yeah, maybe not in the top 5, but
who knew?
Very appropriate.
Yes.
For today, it was a good song. Dave Wilson delivered for you.
Yes, he did.
Let's not forget that album also had Freeway of Love, better known, and of course, with a sax solo from one Clarence Clemens.
See?
Well done, Dave. It all comes back to the great state of New Jersey and its most famous resident after present company, Carol Massar and Dave Wilson. That guy, Bruce Springsteen, and his band. What is it? The Z Street Band? The Zoom Street Band? I don't know.
The Zoom Street.
In any case, Zoom, General Electric. This is a great chart, Dave. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, the reason I picked the song is it's all about Zoom, Zoom video communications, if you want to use the full name. In the coronavirus pandemic, their video conferencing software has gone well beyond the original audience of business users. Families use it, groups use it, you name it. It's all over the place. And what's happened because of that is this company has become a whole lot more valuable. And, I saw this comparison a couple days ago by Michael Batnick, who's the director of research over at Ritholtz Wealth Management. Barry Ritholtz, his firm. And he was comparing the market value of Zoom to Goldman Sachs. It's getting close, but it's not really that close at this point. So I started looking around to try and figure out a comparison that would perhaps be more significant.
And blow everyone's minds.
Zoom.
Thank you.
Has a higher market value than General Electric.
That is just...
Which really is a mind blower. Think about it. GE was once the biggest company in the world by market value. Now, a lot has changed over the years, and certainly this year we've seen the coronavirus have an effect on its businesses, whether you think about jet engines or power turbines. A lot of their products just aren't in demand the way that they were. And, the medical equipment business are big in. Hospitals have other things to think about at this point besides buying new gear. So when you put that all together, you've seen GE's market value drop 32% through yesterday, whereas Zoom's more than tripled. So here's how the numbers stacked up then. Zoom at $68.4 billion, GE at $65.3 billion. Now, actually, Zoom first crossed over GE a month ago, but just for a day. And, this week it's been above there pretty consistently. So it seemed like the right time to highlight this particular comparison. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
I love this, right? It's just, and we will see, Dave, right, longer term, whether or not Zoom, everything that's happening now becomes kind of a fixture in our worlds, because you just don't know, and whether or not it really kind of grows into that valuation.
And here's a comparison for you, a quick one. Actually, a listener, John, pointed out to me. You've got Zoom trading at 1,300 times earnings.
Yeah.
GE's at 15.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting and important comparison. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a bit right after the close of trading.
Thank you for the Aretha. I kind of needed that.
Yeah, that was a nice little boost. Who's Zooming who? Talked about Zoom actually with Jim Coulter. We're going to play a bit of that coming up in a bit, just tying it all together. All right. Let's get down to D.C. Nancy Lyons is there for some world and national headlines. Hey, Nance.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton writes in his new book, President Trump asked Chinese President Xi Jinping to help him win the 2020 election. In summarizing the book, the Washington Post reports Trump asked Xi to increase agricultural purchases from American farmers, which would help his election chances. Bolton also writes the House should have investigated Trump not just for pressuring Ukraine to incriminate his political rivals, but for a variety of instances when he tried to intervene in law enforcement matters for political reasons in order to placate dictators. Well, President Trump is launching an effort to prevent veteran suicides.
My administration is marshaling every resource to stop the crisis of veteran suicide and protect our nation's most treasured heroes.
The $53 million two-year effort will include a public messaging campaign. Well, Senate Republicans are proposing changes to police procedures and accountability in what they're calling the Justice Act. It would establish an enhanced use of force database, would restrict chokeholds, require new police training, and set up commissions to study law enforcement and race. Senator Tim Scott, the lone black Republican senator, drafted the proposal.
We're listening to your concerns. The George Floyd incident certainly accelerated this conversation, and we find ourselves at a place with a package that I think speaks to the families that I spoke with yesterday who lost loved ones. We hear you.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. Can the world reopen for...
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. we get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
When you buy tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm? Or to someone called Al? Or Derek? Or Sanjay? Or Sue? Or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. We're temporarily changing when 60-plus London Oyster photo cards, older persons' freedom passes and English National Concession Scheme passes can be used. From the 15th of June, you will only be able to use these passes from 9 a.m. on weekday mornings. This is to protect those who must travel in the morning peak and allows you to travel at times when you can safely social distance from others. For more information, search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episodes section to see the latest additions.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell on this Wednesday. S&P 500 index in the red after Bolton book details. The S&P now lower by 12, down 0.4%. The Dow down 191 points, down 0.7%. NASDAQ holding on to a 6-point gain. It is up now by just about 0.1%. The 10-year up 7/32 with a yield of 0.72%. We've got gold up 0.1%, $17.28 the ounce. Crude slumping 1.8%, now at $37.70 a barrel. So again, recapping, the Dow, the S&P lower, NASDAQ higher, S&P down 13, a drop there of 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie. Jinx.
Jinx. Charlie Pellet with the Bloomberg Business Flash.
He's so good. He deserves 2 anchors taking him back.
He does.
That's all I'm
just taking care of him. Exactly. We just want him back in the office. He's happier when he's back in the office. He has proven that, and he said it repeatedly.
He's kind of, they're just happy guy.
Well, he's sort of the mayor of Bloomberg.
Yeah, he's totally
I mean,
mayor.
we have an actual mayor,
yeah.
but like the
Sorry,
other
Mike.
one.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, Mike.
He's just on the side. We just let him think he is.
Yeah, we'll let Charlie Bella think he's the mayor.
I do want to make, there's a headline crossing. President Trump signing legislation that would impose sanctions on Chinese officials over human rights abuses against Uyghur. I hope I'm saying it correctly.
Uyghurs?
Uyghur. Thank you. I knew I had it wrong. Uyghur minorities. This has been an issue. My daughter talks about it. You'd think I would have known because she talks about it a lot. So anyway, we just wanted to pass that along. Certainly our world of net.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to take a look at what folks are reading here on the Bloomberg. We're talking a lot about reopening. We're talking candidly a lot about this new book that may be coming out, may not be coming out, Carol.
Yeah, exactly. And I do say, one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg comes from JP Morgan that is sounding warnings on market corrections at market correlations, at 20-year highs. They're watching how a lot of different assets seem to be trading together, whether it's convertible bonds, commodities, emerging market shares. They're all spiking and upending diversification strategies for investors, right? Which is typically what happens, right? Everything doesn't trade in tandem. So let's talk about the market environment. We're just about 11 minutes away from that closing bell. Chris Heisey is back with us, Managing Director, Chief Investment Officer for Bank of America Private Bank and Merrill, on the phone in New York City. Chris, it is nice to have you back with us. Actually, I believe you're on the phone in Connecticut. So talk to me about when you look at this market environment. We're well off, certainly on the equity side of things, well off our lows. But it is interesting that JP Morgan story, they're looking at different asset classes, and there's a lot of market correlations, a lot of trades happening in tandem.
Yes, I think this is emblematic of a market environment in which, first of all, the liquidity was the first phase of the workout process. And with hyper liquidity, once you get that stabilization and that low point like we had on March 23rd, you look for signs that are confirming things. You look for signs in the economy and then ultimately in the market. And with that liquidity push, correlations tend to rise. And as correlations rise, you get that first phase, and that is the catch-up phase. And there's a lot of investors out of this market. Cash levels are very high, in some cases at record levels. And then next phase is more than likely the long-term money, particularly the asset management community, which is no longer getting redemptions, but are actually have to put some of that cash to work and participate in a market advance that we see unfolding between now and the end of the year.
So what's going to trigger that next phase?
The next phase is an interesting one because we've gone from a shutdown to reopening, and now it's a reevaluation phase. Mm-hmm. What does that really mean? It means that we need to see confirmation in the broader economy, both the consumer and manufacturing, and then at the global level, we need to see global trade pick up. This will come in fits and starts. We've seen a lot of V-like shapes already across the board. But how high is that right tail of the V is the critical point to see whether or not that long-term asset management money actually starts to come back into the market. We expect that, and it's because the narrative has changed. The narrative went from pricing in a long depression to pricing in a very difficult, shortest in history potentially, recession that is turning over into a recovery.
So when you take a look at some of the discussions happening right now around things like big macro issues like trade still, right? It never seems to die down. We do know that U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, he was up on Capitol Hill today talking to the House Ways and Means Committee and talked about some different things. He talked about pulling out of the global digital tax talks. This is something that feels like it's constantly being talked about. And I think depending on whether or not we get another 4 years of President Trump and his team in the White House, I feel like it will continue to be certainly a big area of discussion. How does that impact or play as a factor in the financial markets and investing, in your view, Chris?
One of the greatest accelerants that we have seen coming out of the global pandemic and difficult period is that the acceleration of this dual supply chain world is really just beginning. It's not going to be as easy as most people believe. Large corporations are stuck in long-term contracts. It's very difficult for operations to move within 1 year, let alone a few months. But certainly over the next few years, one of the big themes out there will not necessarily be complete deglobalization, but deglobalization leading to different supply chains controlled by domestic economies. And if that starts to happen, which we expect, onshoring coming back into the United States, the regional economic zones of Europe, of Japan, of Asia, driven by China, and the United States within North America, are likely to be building these regional trade zones more or less than what we saw in many decades past, which is the global trade zone. And that will be key from the standpoint of negotiation. So it is absolutely critical now. It's actually going to get even more important in the couple of years ahead.
So what are you worried the most about?
Well, first and foremost, it's, science gets us back, and maybe not to normal, but certainly to a new normal. And the human healthcare crisis, number one, is always top of mind. It will likely be that for the foreseeable future. Treatment and testing are critical there while we wait for vaccines. Number two would be the U.S. election risk, and that would be more about change, just general change. Markets don't like change if that were to occur. And then three, we just touched on it, it's what's the real relationship with the U.S. and China for the next 5 to 10 years? That would be those in that order. Those would be the biggest risks.
So in terms of then investment decision making right now, especially when you hear about a lot of people moving more and more into cash, I just do wonder, what are some of the asset classes that you guys spend a lot of time talking about?
What's interesting here is when the knee-jerk reaction is high cash levels, whether it's institutionally or the private client side, one believes that it's a move to risk off, and it's a risk-off move for a long period of time. What actually we see happening, given the wealth that we manage, is this movement towards, we've had a long run of a bull market previous to the virus. And there's a lot of locked up gains. They were taking off the table because many people were above their goals, whether it was retirement or something else. And now they need a new catalyst to come back into what still appears to be the great unknown. So the asset classes we're watching for confirmation that the recovery is not just a small V, but eventually gets back to what we call the new normal, is the cyclical areas. So Japan has been outperforming. Cyclicals have outperformed defensives. Small caps are narrowing their great underperformance. High yield has been outperforming. But most importantly, these two are critical to this reflationary period. First is the yield curve. Very different today than it was pre-virus. We were worried about deflation.
Right.
Now we've got a steeper yield curve. Strong dollar was before, now a weaker dollar. Those are the two most important parts.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Hey, Chris, great to check in with you. Chris Heisey, Managing Director, Chief Investment Officer at Bank of America Private Bank in Merrill, on the phone from Connecticut. And we've got equities, Jason, just off their lows. But we've really bounced around a lot. Stick around, folks. We're going to take you down to that closing bell, take a look at some of the stocks and sectors on the move for the Wednesday trade. This is Bloomberg Radio.
With a new day comes new COVID-19.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, you must now wear a face covering at all times, avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Hi, I'm an ad for Voxy, the mobile network that gives you endless social media without eating your data. Plus, there's no contract, so you can cancel any time. Get endless social media plus a whopping 12 gig for just £10 a month. What? Don't just sit there twiddling your thumbs. Get your SIM today at voxy.co.uk. Voxy. Stay connected, stay endless. Offer ends 25th of June. Endless social requires 30 days rolling plan, some general data, and does not include voice and video calls. 25 gigabytes roaming, fair use and terms apply.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
On Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it, sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. As you wrap up trading on this Wednesday, turned out to be a mixed session. Do want to begin with a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. U.S. virus cases up 1.2% in line with the past week's average. Stocks lower for the first time in 4 days as worrying increases in coronavirus cases overtook optimism about stimulus measures. The benchmark S&P 500 index swung between gains and losses for most of the day before turning red late, with the energy, real estate, financial sectors all leading the declines. Infections increased from China to Brazil. Iran warned it may need a new lockdown. Texas reported a surge in hospitalizations. Here are the closing numbers. S&P down 11, a drop of 0.4%. The Dow tumbled 170 points, close to the low of the day, down 0.7%. Nasdaq held on to a 14-point gain, up today by about 0.2%. 10-year up 7/30 seconds with a yield of 0.72%. As for the market outlook, Chris Heisey is Chief Investment Officer at Bank of America Private Bank. Moments ago here on Bloomberg Business Week, he told us he sees the advance continuing through the rest of the year.
We've gone from shutdown to reopening, and now it's a reevaluation phase. What does that really mean? It means that we need to see confirmation in the broader economy, both the consumer and manufacturing, and then at the global level, we need to see global trade pick up. This will come in fits and starts. We've seen a lot of V-like shapes already across the board.
Tough day for a lot of the cruise line names. They declined after Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings extended a suspension of global cruising through the end of September, dashing the stock market's hopes for a return to service months after the COVID-19 pandemic shuttered the industry. Among some of the cruise names today, we did see Norwegian down 8.4%, Royal Caribbean down 7.1%, Carnival down by 6.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle.
Damn, Shippy, you got some moves.
And I'm moving from town to town.
Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week. Movers and Shakers with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, time to take a look at some of the stocks on the move. Charlie, giving you those closing numbers on Wall Street. And let me just take a little bit of a deeper dive into the S&P 500. We had 154 names in the index higher today, 348 lower, and 3 unchanged. And if I take a look, let me just pull it up for you. In terms of those major industry groups in the S&P 500, there are 11 of them. We did see, understandably, most of them down for the day. And they barely eked out a gain. Call it unchanged. Communication services, consumer discretionary, information technology, just a hair higher today, but really unchanged. Bottom of the pack, though, Jason, financials were down 1.4%. Energy names were down about 3.3%.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look across, some of the movers and shakers. In the positive column, you have Advanced Auto Parts and ATVI, which is, of course, Activision Blizzard. So you're like, okay, so auto parts and video games. You had, I think in the case of Advanced Auto, you had one of their CEO buying some shares. So that's obviously a bullish take.
Insider buying, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And in the case of ATVI, I believe that was, let's see, it's hard to say. There's nothing really so clear. I mean, the fact of the matter is we know some of those video game makers, given what people are doing. We talked about Zoom earlier. People are at home, playing more games.
Yeah.
They're doing all sorts of...
It's up 27% Activision this year.
This year, right. Yeah. So on the other side, you had a couple names very familiar to us, more on the downside than the upside. NCLH, Norwegian Cruise Lines, and Royal Caribbean, RCL, down again.
Yeah, well, and, to hear what Charlie said, I mean, I think as a lot of industries start to reopen and they realize what's involved or how do they do it safely, it's not so easy. And for the cruise industry, I just have to say, I think it's going to take a while. I think folks are not going to feel safe. We know the stories. I think ultimately people will get back on ships, no doubt about it. That's just the way the world works.
Yeah.
And people are pretty resilient. But that whole... it's a healthcare crisis, got to deal with that, and you got to make people feel safe. That's how you reopen, especially in those congested areas, whether it's a cruise ship or whether it's a major city.
Right. Well, and we also know we've heard this repeatedly from whether it's the CEO of Kayak, who we spoke to recently, whether it's other folks like the CEO of Trivago, who we've also spoken with. People are going to stay closer to home. They're going to drive to... I think people are still going to go on vacation. If I had to guess right now, it feels like people are going to get away. I have some friends, from around here who they're going to the beach this weekend, renting a house, doing that.
Right.
Open air, all of that. I think you're going to see some of that.
I think
but in terms of I'm going to get on a boat for 14 days. I mean, come on, man.
Come on, man. What are you, Joe Biden? Come on, man. Zoom. I think you were looking at Zoom just because Dave Wilson talked about it.
It's down.
That chart of the day, it's down a little bit lower. They did come out. There's a story that we have on the terminal by Nico Grant saying that Zoom is going to offer full end-to-end encryption to all users, free and paid, succumbing to pressure from members of Congress and the public who pushed the video conferencing company to bolster privacy. That was a big concern. We talked with the CEO and founder.
Yeah,
and
he owned it. I mean, and I
totally
think they have gone to great lengths to take care of that. But it almost feels like, first of all, the market ended up being down overall or mixed, certainly down the S&P and the Dow. And, this is a name where people are like, oh, yeah, they did have those problems. Maybe I don't want this to be more than GE.
It's also had a tremendous run. Let's not forget that. I mean, when Dave talked about, as somebody emailed him, the current PE is 1,304.
Yeah.
So price to earnings, it's pretty
versus
pricey.
GE, which is what he said, 15.
Oh, yeah, it was like exactly. It was a teen number.
All right, let's do the VIX volatility. Of course, the market is moving around a bit, but volatility very, very light. The VIX down 0.3%, closing at 33.57. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave!
Hey, Mr. Wilson, back with us. Dave Wilson with your stock of the day. What you got?
I've got Core Civic, Jason. It's an owner and operator of prisons and immigrant detention centers. The company was founded in 1983 and went public in 1997 as Corrections Corp of America. The name was changed in 2016, though the ticker stayed the same, CXW. Core Civic shares peaked in 2015. They fell that year and every year since then as political activism led many investors and banks to shun the industry. In March, the share set an 11-year low. Core Civic has been up and down since then, and today was a down day. The company said it would look at, quote, corporate structure and capital allocation alternatives. That's coming from a statement. This calls into question its future as a real estate investment trust, a status it's held since 2013. Now, CoreCivic suspended its dividend in light of the review. The company had made payouts since becoming a REIT. At the stock's low in March, the dividend yield was more than 20%, which signaled some kind of a change was coming. All this sent CoreCivic shares to their biggest loss in 3 months. They dropped about 17%. And by the way, shares of another prison REIT, Geo Group, they were down 7.8%.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we were talking to Justin Fox the other day about sort of the incarceration system, and the private prisons are a relatively small part, but a very profitable part. And so,
God, I remember when people were touting it, like, this is a great investment because you know what, there's always going to be demand. And like, you know, when you start to think about that, you're like, okay, well, maybe there's something broken with the system that there's always going to be more and more demand. Maybe it just doesn't work. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. A really thoughtful day. And we keep quoting your chart of the day because we just love it, that comparison between the market cap of GE and Zoom. Good stuff always from Dave Wilson. Jason?
All right, let's get out to San Francisco. Ed Baxter is there for World and National News. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Carol. This just breaking now in the past couple of minutes. Prosecutor in Atlanta has announced that felony murder is among the charges filed against the officer allegedly fatally shooting Rashard Brooks in the Wendy's parking lot. The other officer on scene is facing aggravated assault charges. So again, felony murder will be among the charges in Atlanta. We'll keep you up to date with that. John Bolton and Donald Trump head-to-head in book battle. We've reported the White House has gone to court to stop the publication on Monday, but there are excerpts out today. First, White House spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany.
To have highly classified information from the government of the United States in a book that will be published, it's unacceptable.
Or maybe embarrassing, the excerpts obtained by the New York Times say that the president asked China's President Xi Jinping to buy agricultural products from states that would help him win this year's election. Bolton says the president was pleading with Xi to ensure he'd win. Bolton also says congressional investigation shouldn't have stopped at Ukraine. New York will be able to move into reopening stage 2 as early as Monday.
Our number of hospitalizations, lowest level since we started, amen, 1,400. Number of deaths, 17 deaths in the state of New York.
And Governor Andrew Cuomo says they are still worried about effects of the protests and the spread. They'll know more by the weekend, but it could very well be Monday. Fingers crossed. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The best of Bloomberg.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find belter solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for streaming all your favourite box sets back to back while sitting in your garden, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Sue, or Sanjay, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Ali on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Airbags to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move lower today for the U.S. stock market, down for the first time in 4 days as worrying increases in coronavirus cases overtook optimism about stimulus measures. The S&P 500 index swung between gains and losses for most of the day before turning lower late in the day. Energy, real estate, financial sectors leading today's declines. S&P down 11, a drop there of 0.4%. The Dow down 170, down 0.7%. NASDAQ up 14, a gain of about 0.2%. 10-year up 7/30 seconds with a yield of 0.72%. Gold up 0.1%, 17.28 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%, 37.75 a barrel. Recapping equities mixed, S&P lower, down 11, down 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, we've been very fortunate, Carol, to catch up with some leaders of major universities across the country of late. And the latest installment in that conversation ongoing is Gary Miller. He's president of the University of Akron, joining us on the phone from Akron. President Miller, really nice to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Well, I have an affinity for your school. We have a good friend, Carol and I do, Joe Reese, who's a proud alum. I know he's listening right now, so go Zips. And Lisa Sable is an old friend as well who works on your team. So really delighted. I've had a chance to visit your campus a few years ago. I mean, tell us a little bit about the university, because where it is and the community that it serves, I think, is really important to understand.
Yeah, the University of Akron is an urban research university, and right in downtown Akron, which, as you probably know, is a legacy city in America, a long history of manufacturing, the tire and rubber capital of the world, and really is representative of a lot of what's happened in American cities in Middle America in the last since the early 2000s.
So, what's it like now? I mean, what is the feel on the ground? Because every time we talk to someone, especially outside of our little bubble, President Miller, we want to know, like, what is it like? And, you know, both in terms of, both of the crises that I guess we're going through.
Just been it's just been a heavy 3 months and a heavy then 3 weeks on top of it.
Yeah, one of the things we were talking to our board about last week was, even though we have a heavy lift with with coming through the COVID thing, this is a real historic moment in America around race relations, and there's been a lot of emphasis on that and thought about that in Akron. A lot of community conversations. We've had protests, almost all peaceful, and the university, of course, is gearing up to think about this in many different ways, including with an action group that students formed and community conversations that we're focused on. And then, we've got to examine ourselves, too. We're going to announce a task force next week to look at our practices and policies around, unconscious bias and the way we assemble a nurturing and inclusive environment.
What's interesting to hear you say that, and forgive me, because I think we're all trying to figure this out. This is not a new dilemma. We've been talking about, as many of our guests have come on and said, racism, it's been around for 400 years in America, and yet there's a lot of discussions. But what do you think are concrete steps that need to be taken? I mean, you've been in academia for a long time. You were chancellor of the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. You were at Wichita State University, and more. And I just do wonder, what are the practices and policies, the real actions that make a difference and that help erase racism in our country?
We're, public higher education should be in the business of providing opportunities. And I think educational opportunities is what we do best, and we're focused on that. I think in a city like Akron, where we have 30% of the population is African American, 40-some% of the school district, we've got to be about understanding the dynamics of those families, understanding how we can work with our community leaders to get these students opportunities for higher education. And we know the jobs of the future are going to require it. We know the jobs in the Akron area are going to require it. So that's what we're focused on. But I do think there's a bigger role for our universities. We are often the honest broker in the community. We can convene people. We have incredible faculty expertise around many issues related to systemic racism. We need to deploy those better. And in some cases, I think we even have to contribute some of our resources to making our communities better.
Is it fair to say, President Miller, that students are impatient? I feel like, Carol and I both have teenagers, and one of the things I think we've sensed from them, maybe in a way that we haven't seen in several generations, is a sense of urgency. I wonder what you're hearing from your students, knowing that they're not on campus now, but I know you're in touch with them.
Right, we are. They are impatient, but they're incredibly thoughtful, too. I think my sense in our students, we have very thoughtful students. About 70% of them work. Most of them come from middle or lower income families. They have real experience, and they're very thoughtful about the problem, but they are impatient. They do want action, and we should take a key from that and work toward action.
Well, go ahead, Carol.
No. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just going to say, we want to talk a little bit more about coming back. We're going to do some news in a second, but just in the next 30 or 40 seconds, what's the one thing you're most focused on in terms of getting kids back on campus in the fall?
So we want them to be safe, and we want them to have campus experience. We've learned a lot about education and a lot about technology, and we've also learned that we're a high-density organization that thrives on interaction, and we have to figure that out.
Yeah, right. That's the thing I feel like so much in the world of higher education. It's not an easy thing, and so much of the experience and the education is being there on site. We're going to continue with Gary Miller. He's the 18th president of the University of Akron. He took the job just last October, Jason, so maybe we can talk a little bit, too, about taking the job and certainly not the year or not what he expected maybe in his first year on the job. So we'll continue that. And I want to hear a little bit more about those plans for the fall and also the financial pressures on the university. We've been talking about that a lot with Janet Lauren of Bloomberg News, who follows universities. So we'll bring him back and continue that conversation.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to think about it through the lens of a public university, too. It reminds me of the conversation we had with Joe Gable over at University of Minnesota. It's a different remit. They're serving a different audience, and I think, Dr. Miller, President Miller, described it well in terms of who their constituency is, because that changes the equation, makes it that much more important. We're going to continue this in just a minute. In the meantime, this is Bloomberg Business Week.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks closed lower for the first time in 4 days on worries about increases in coronavirus infections. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 170. The S&P 500 lost 11. The Nasdaq gained 14. Hertz plan to sell $500 million in stock is on hold. The company suspended the offering pending an SEC review. Hertz, which is in Chapter 11, has warned repeatedly that the shares could wind up worthless. Fed Chair Jay Powell is urging Congress not to pull back too soon on relief to households and small businesses. In testimony before a House panel, Powell said the economy is at a critical phase and that support would be well placed. Aunt Jemima is out. Uncle Ben and Mrs. Butterworth may soon follow amid protests for racial justice. PepsiCo will rebrand its Aunt Jemima breakfast products. Mars says it's evaluating Uncle Ben's rice. ConAgra says it's reviewing Mrs. Butterworth's syrup. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
How long?
And action.
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for streaming all your favourite box sets back to back while sitting in your garden, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Sue, or Sanjay, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Ali on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, you must now wear a face covering at all times, avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games and big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was, but he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen. Live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Straight ahead, we're going to continue our conversation with President Gary Miller from University of Akron. Looking forward to talking to him about reopening and what it takes.
I think it's one of the toughest spots to be in right now in terms of if you run a college or university, because you've got a lot of constituents. You're trying to make everybody happy, and it's not an easy one. All right, let's get back to your top business stories. Once again, here is Charlie Powell.
All right, I thank you very much, Carol Messer. Thank you, Jason. We've got the Dow, the S&P lower. NASDAQ did advance today. It was a mixed Wednesday. Stocks swinging between gains and losses. S&P spent much of the day on the plus side in the end, though, an 11-point loss, down 0.4%. NASDAQ managed to hold on to a 14-point gain, up by just about 0.1%. The Dow down 170 for the Dow. That was a drop today of about 0.65%. Certainly the ongoing concerns about the spread of the virus, one factor today. Also the Bolton book that weighed on investors. The 10-year down the 10-year yield, I should say, 0.72%. It was down 7:30 seconds. Gold up $1.43 the ounce, up 0.1%, 17.27. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.7%, 37.74 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Now, as for markets in the economic backdrop, Jill Carey Hall is Director of U.S. Equity Strategy at Bank of America Securities.
There's no question the payrolls number, the retail sales have been strong recently, but we're not expecting this initial V off the bottom to persist. And I think you'd want to see, a little bit more confidence in the sustainability of the recovery. But we do see risks that this is more of a U shape, and even if we see the initial V off the bottom.
West Texas Intermediate crude again down 1.7% today. Saudi Arabia, the world's biggest oil exporter, is hitting the brakes on developing some of its crude and natural gas deposits, idling 2 offshore drilling rigs as the coronavirus batters energy use. Among some of the big well-known energy names today, ExxonMobil, for example, down 3.3%. BP was down 3.5%. EOG Resources lower by 3.9%. And Pioneer Natural Resources down by 2.9%. Recapping, S&P down 11, down 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, appreciate that update. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly, and our guest at this hour is Gary Miller, president of the University of Akron, who, as we mentioned, or I don't know if we did, we talked to it, I think, after we started our discussion. He took this job last October. President Miller is still on the phone with us from Akron, Ohio. I have to say, President Miller, this was not exactly how you expected your first year in the job to go. I'm just guessing.
No, it's not. But I'm not alone.
No, you're not. And I think it's a really tricky spot to be. Tell us, though, about the financial pressures that you are feeling on yourself, really, and on the university right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. This virus really has stressed every dimension of the business model for public higher education. And all of our revenue streams were badly hit, and we're looking at about a $65 million challenge for next fiscal year, and we're working pretty hard to get that figured out. We did do some real interesting things fast, though. We were able to reorganize the institution very quickly from 11 colleges to 5, which I think gives us a much more nimble administration. We still have all of our programs, but they're in closer proximity with the related programs and less administrative costs. The faculty here did that in a month and a half, which I think must be a world record for reorganization in higher education.
Have you been able to hold on to everybody in terms of your staff?
We will not be able to, but we're still working through that. And we're in negotiations now with our union about that, but it's a tough time. It's a tough time.
And so how does, in the short term, the experience change? And again, we're asking this question in part as parents, but on behalf of lots of parents out there and, candidly, some, precocious college students who listen to this radio show to, be smart about business, I'm sure. What can folks expect when they show up to Akron this fall?
This is really interesting, and a lot of us don't know. We'll be working in a low-density environment with 20,000 students. They will be taking classes, almost all of which will be hybrid in some form or another. Campus activities will be very different. We're having to really emphasize, personal health and masks, and we're still trying to understand the kind of testing regime you'll put in. There are a lot of things the universities do, like studios and athletics and dance and the band and the glee, that just can't be done in low density normally, and we're trying to figure that out. And of course, these are young adults, and they have minds of their own, so they will be out in the community. We're working very closely with our local health department, local community hospitals, and we do expect, to have some cases on campus. So we're ready to take care of those, quarantine and test and trace if we need to. It'll be very different. We'll learn a lot. One of the things we're doing is getting groups of students together to talk to us during the semester so that we can make adjustments as we go along.
Interesting.
So if they have, we're trying to do some real-time adjusting here. If they have complaints about the way we're doing it, we want them to be innovative. I always tell freshmen, make sure you change us before you leave. So we're going to give them a real opportunity this fall to help us figure it out.
Well, and I have to think your surrounding community, right? Because a college or university, it's about the college community, university community, but it's also the surrounding community, right? There's small businesses, there's a lot of things that, rely on you as well.
Oh, it's a codependency in Akron. We're 150 years old in this city, and we can't imagine being here without Akron, and the city can't imagine being here without us. And so that's true. We work very closely together.
And so, it's interesting. I also wonder how much you have to coordinate with other schools across Ohio. I mean, is that the coordination you have to have? Is it regional? Is it local? Like, who has to be sort of all on the same page, Dr. Miller?
It's a great coordinating effort across Ohio. We have a inter-university council. We talk, our groups talk virtually every week. And the things we're doing are setting up common protocols for how we're going to phase in, how we're going to test, how we're going to do, so that we get, so that we can learn from each other, and we're all kind of giving everybody the same experience and taking on the same risks. A great group of colleagues in Ohio, I have to tell you.
Well, and some great schools, including yours, across the state. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see in some form or another some Zips football this fall. Gary Miller is the president of the University of Akron, joining us on the phone from Akron. Great to get. I love catching up with college presidents.
I do too. And I gotta say, they're under a lot of stress.
Oof.
I think about the president of Ithaca that we talked to, and I know someone who's been in the administrative staff there and was talking to them. I mean, it's just not an easy place to be, and you're going to make some people unhappy with whatever decisions you make.
Nobody's going to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go get them.
Yeah, good luck. In any case, much more ahead, including part of my conversation with Jim Coulter. In the meantime, let's get out to San Francisco. That's where Jim Coulter was. That's where Ed Baxter is. He's got world national headlines. Hey, Ed.
You got it. Thank you, Jason. Former Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe has been charged with felony murder in the death of Rayshard Brooks.
We concluded and considered it as one of our important considerations that Mr. Brooks never presented himself as a threat.
Paul Howard Jr., Fulton County District Attorney, saying if found guilty, Rolfe faces either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. New York may be ready to enter phase 2 reopening as early as Monday. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the medical statistics today say go, but
we're going to see, we believe, the fuller impact, if any, of the protests in terms of our health indicators around this weekend, maybe into the first few days of next week.
In the state, record low for new cases and hospitalizations for the pandemic period, but there's major concern elsewhere. Arizona's cases spike of hospital capacity, also concern in Texas and Florida, showing some strain as well. Excerpts from John Bolton's book released today by the New York Times say the President Donald Trump pleaded with China's President Xi Jinping to buy agricultural states, a byproduct from them that could help him win the election. He uses the word pleaded. He also says congressional investigation should not have stopped with Ukraine, that there was much more. The White House, well...
This book is full of classified information, which is inexcusable. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton should
know better, she says. That's Kayleigh McEnany. It is in the courts now. We'll see. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging...
So I often struggled at school. Once, when we had a maths test, I looked around the room and everyone was just doing it. And I couldn't, and I began to cry. But my teacher came over and said, it might look like one big problem, but it's just a handful of small ones, and you can deal with that. I hear her voice in my head for every problem I face to this day.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. You could get £26,000 tax-free to train as a teacher. Subject to eligibility, selected subjects only. Search Get Into Teaching.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for streaming all your favourite box sets back to back while sitting in your garden, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Sue, or Sanjay, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Ali on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games and big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was, but he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen. Who says only the experts get to do the talking? On the Scuttle Puck NHL Hockey Podcast, irreverent outsiders Mike Bond and Dale Horde give their untrained opinions on all things hockey from the fans' perspective.
I don't know how you get those guys out of there. And Crosby, as great as he's been, it's just such a different era, so it's tough with the... he didn't have the crazy number of points that Orr, Lemieux, and Gretzky did. They just...
Search Scuttle Puck on TuneIn to listen.
As the science and medical world continues to learn more about COVID-19, we're all learning how to best live with it. Because the news is always changing, TuneIn helps you make sure you're getting the latest information on the pandemic with live streams of CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and more. Plus, evidence-driven podcasts like Coronavirus, Fact versus Fiction, and Podcast 19 for the latest stories and reports. Search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet, developing story out of Google. Alphabet's Google says it will try to improve the number of black workers in senior roles and set a goal of filling at least 30% of leadership positions with employees from underrepresented groups by 2025. Search Giant also says it's going to be hiring more people in Atlanta, Washington, Chicago, and London. It was a mixed day for the U.S. stock market today. Stocks did move lower for the first time in 4 days as worrying increases in coronavirus cases overtook optimism about stimulus measures. The S&P 500 index ended the session lower by 11 points, down by about 0.4%. The Dow down 170, down 0.7%. Nasdaq held on to a 14-point gain, up by about 0.2%. 10-year up 6/32, yield 0.73%. Gold up 0.1%, 17.27 the ounce, and crude lower by 1.7%, 37.74 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, you know how I kind of love it when I get these harebrained schemes and then it all kind of comes together?
Yeah. It all comes
so
together.
That happened today.
So tell me.
So Jim Coulter, he and I do this little thing every year at our CEO conference, The Year Ahead, which you and I co-host.
Right.
And I love getting up on stage with him, although actually, I'm in the audience, Phil Donahue style. I'm asking him questions. He's taking us through the Year Ahead. Phil Donahue.
Everybody gets a car. No,
half of our audience is like, who's Phil Donahue? Yeah. Anyway, has better hair than I do.
Scary.
In any case.
Yes, he does.
So Jim very nicely agreed to basically reboot his Year Ahead conversation because, a lot has changed in the world. Protests, corporate conversations, talking about racial injustice, obviously COVID-19 as well. Right. We started off by talking about the outlook for equality. This was part of our Year Ahead Revisited. Check it out. Let's start, if we can, on this question of racial justice, because I know it's something you've thought about, and I know that TPG is talking about, and that you're talking to that huge sort of Rolodex, or not even Rolodex, but the partners that you have around the world.
A lot has changed since we were together in November. A number of the trends we're talking about, the rise of subscription businesses, corporate responsibility, are continuing apace. But clearly, when the history of the year is written, it'll be about two issues that have shaped the first half of the year, and I think those two issues are likely to drive the year ahead. The coronavirus, we're all beginning to build our understanding on, but much more recent is the racial justice movement. And quite frankly, I hesitated to talk about it today. It still feels early. It still feels like a moment that we're all dealing with the pain of the murders of Rayshard Brooks, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. And we're still in the middle of, I think, a societal and personal journey, particularly for people like you and I, Jason, who have had the privilege of growing up in a country as a white male. But I knew you'd ask. You're a reporter, so let me just share a few early thoughts about where I think we are and how it might shape the year ahead. There are many, many words that we could use, but I think it may be best just to start with pictures. It feels different this time. 3,500 cities of protests. And if you go into these pictures, you see a racially diverse group of people engaged in it. Only 2 years ago, 40% of people were backing the Black Lives Matter movement. Today, 7 out of 10 white Americans say that racial injustice is a major problem for the country. These protesters were not deterred by a global pandemic. They were not deterred by tear gas in Washington, tornadoes in Florida. And the depth and breadth of what we're seeing, I think, speaks well to how it will shape the world ahead. And one of the pictures, quite frankly, that really impacted me was this is no longer just a U.S. issue. It's an issue that has grabbed the global attention, both reflecting upon the U.S. and reflecting on broader issues within the world. So as I look at where we've traveled so far and the world ahead, I think we're in the midst of a social and political revolution that's likely to be expressed in many ways. The question we also have to engage on is, will it be expressed in the business and investment world? And here, I think I'm beginning to see a birth of a bit of optimism and a bit of action that I have to say I wasn't expecting to see as fast, and I'm gratified to see that it is moving. Let me just touch on a little bit of that. One of the cultural bellwethers I always look to, Jason, are the sports teams and Hollywood. And sometime they give you a sense of how the world is going to engage in an issue. And here the news is, frankly, nothing short of gratifying and amazing. The NFL, which was only 2016 that Colin Kaepernick took a knee. Think about what's happened since then. And in a immediate 180, it's moved to the right side of this issue. The idea that NASCAR would ban the Confederate flag from its events was a distant thought not too long ago. And one of the things I love, if you look at the announcement here, Jason, the presence of the Confederate flag, small c, Confederate. Traditionally, it's been large C, delegating not only the flag, but the Confederacy to the place it belongs to go. And the Premier League, perhaps the most coveted advertising space in sports, is a Premier League jersey. What's on there now? Black Lives Matter. So we're beginning to see the early signs of engagement through some of the cultural icons of the world. But the question is it going to spread? And here again, cautious green shoots. 3 points I'd make. First of all, we have a little bit of an inside view of this because we own a company called EverFi, which is the #1 producer of software on everything from D&I training to allyship to unconscious bias. They also produce software that is resetting the teaching of African American history. And when we look inside that company, I was talking to the CEO over the weekend, we are seeing a doubling and tripling of inquiries from companies. So companies are understanding they can't just speak externally about this. They need to get their own house in order. So first of all, we're seeing early evidence of companies changing their internal practices. Second, companies are stepping forward in a public way, and they're stepping forward with their pocketbook. Fortune 100 has already, according to Axios, done $1.6 billion of pledges led by Bank of America. And so we're seeing engagement at a level we haven't seen before. And the third area, and this is in some ways, I think, the most important, is our business is really going to change their business practices to reflect this. And again, early green shoots, the 15% pledge, the idea of putting 15% of your shelf space into African-American brands and companies. Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM have stopped selling facial recognition software. Estee Lauder is changing their hiring practices and committing to reflect the world makeup in their workforce, not just their historical makeup by 2025. And even this morning, Pepsi pulling the Aunt Jemima brand. We're beginning to see actions on the business practices side that will strengthen the movement. And the third thing I would point out is yet to be seen, but again, I'm hopeful, is will consumers engage? Because if we can get society to engage, businesses to engage, and consumers to engage, it'll build the foundation of what's happening here.
All right, and that is just part of my conversation with Jim Coulter, co-CEO, co-founder of TPG. I will say one of the most thoughtful investors out there. Can I re-say my favorite line from the whole thing?
Please.
I asked him personally what he was doing, and he talked about some of the things he was reading and watching, and he said, here's what it comes down to: less Tiger King, more Dr. King.
I love that.
Perfect.
Just let it sit with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have to say what he said about, committing 15% of your shelves and stuff. Like, money talks. We keep saying it. We keep saying it. All right. We do have to remind everybody, if you're listening in New York and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, we continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in D.C., Sun On with Kevin Cirilli is next. More of Mr. Coulter. You can catch that on our weekend show, so be sure to check that out. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Business is like a puzzle.
Listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. We're temporarily changing when 60-plus London Oyster photo cards, older persons' freedom passes and English National Concession Scheme passes can be used. From the 15th of June, you will only be able to use these passes from 9 a.m. on weekday mornings. This is to protect those who must travel in the morning peak and allows you to travel at times when you can safely social distance from others. For more information, search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk Podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games and big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was, but he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen. To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. CDC says there are still precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Wash hands often for 20 seconds and encourage others to do the same. Use hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol if no soap or water is available. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. It was a mixed day on Wall Street. Stocks fell for the first time in 4 days as worrying increases in coronavirus cases overtook optimism about stimulus measures. Treasury note yields fell. The dollar was little changed. S&P 500 index down 11, a drop of 0.4%. The Dow down 170, down 0.7%. NASDAQ up 14. That was a gain of about 0.2%. 10-year up 430 seconds with a yield of 0.73%. So a mixed day on Wall Street. Alphabet's Google says it will try to improve the number of black workers in senior roles and set a goal of filling at least 30% of leadership positions with employees from underrepresented groups by the year 2025. Now, as for the Federal Reserve and the economic backdrop, Priya Misra is head of rates strategy at TD Securities USA.
We've had unprecedented stimulus, and the world is reopening, the US is reopening. You're going to get this better data. I think they're going to become the elephant in the room then to prevent rates from rising, because they seem to be a lot more worried about the structural damage that COVID might have caused to the economy. So they just don't want rates, at least Treasury rates, rising.
And again, the 10-year, the yield there, 0.73%. Gold down 6 cents, $17.26 the ounce. Little changed. We've got West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.8%, $37.70 a barrel. Wells Fargo CEO Charlie Scharf, who vowed last month to do more to improve diversity within the firm's ranks, is tying executives' pay to their progress in doing so. Wells Fargo shares today, they did decline by 3.75%. So again, recapping, turned out to be a mixed day on Wall Street. Both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 index declined. NASDAQ did advance. Texas virus cases jumped 3.4%, surpassing the 7-day average of 2.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
I jumped the gun because I'm kind of eager to get to our next guest, so forgive me, everybody.
No one heard you. I could just see you
could
jumping
you?
the gun.
I know.
We have good engineers who just know to keep you down until the music plays.
That gray matter, it just, the synapses aren't firing. Yeah, I know. So Everett Sands is the founder and CEO of Lendistry. It's a fintech company. It's also one of the largest community development financial institutions. It focuses on lending to very small businesses, especially those owned by minorities, women, and veterans. Those are certainly populations that are, no doubt about it, underserved by the financial community. Everett joins us on the phone from Orange County, California. Everett, thank you so much for being with us. We have a lot we want to talk about, but I do want to ask you, because we've been reporting on stories a lot in the past few weeks, and probably longer, about the inequality when it comes to access to our financial system in this country. If you're Black, if you're Latino, if you're a woman, your access to capital is harder than if you are a white man. What has been your own experience as an African-American founder and citizen of this country when it comes to tapping into the entrenched financial system?